BBC Radio Suffolk with James Hazell.
Now, Phil Harding is a fellow I was keen to speak to a while ago because he released a book which charted the history of PWL, Stock, Aitken and Waterman. He's had the book out for a while now. I found it an entirely fascinating read. And Phil, I think you, as a local author, you've got some news on this book, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Thank you, James. I self-published that book about a year ago, and I've managed to find a publisher to put out a new version.
Oh, okay. How did the initial version, how did that go in terms of response and sales?
Very good, yes. I self-published, printed at Gipping Press locally, who were fantastic, and managed to sell them all. And, quite a dream, really, that a publisher's now picked it up, and a version that's twice as long as the original book
Right.
is coming out on Monday, in fact. So.
I love the technical details towards the end.
Thank you, yeah.
That's what really got me hooked, the technical details of how you did what you did. Just so folk know, you were one of the recording engineers in the heyday of the Stock, Aitken, Waterman, 3 or 4, 5 years of being the hit makers, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I was there from the beginning. 1984 I started working with them, with Dead or Alive, and I worked there right through till 1992. So saw the rise and the fall.
And met some very interesting people along the way. Kylie sat in reception not knowing what to do with herself, for instance.
Yes, and it's quite that particular week at PWL when Kylie came over to do the first recording. It's particularly interesting, and in fact, there's 3 different versions of what actually happened, and I've decided that I won't judge which one is the correct version. I've just kind of printed them all in the book and let people make their own minds up.
Make their own minds up. Phil, what made you decide to write this book then? Obviously you had the experience, you knew an awful lot about it, you sensed that there could be some interest in it, so what made you actually sit down to write it?
It's exactly what you were saying earlier, actually, James. It's sometimes you think, yes, I've got a book in me, and I felt if I had one, it would be those interesting years in the 80s at PWL. And I'd been thinking about it for 10 years, finally sort of found the time a couple of years ago to get seriously started. Went away for a week and locked myself in a studio apartment somewhere and just started bashing it out, not really knowing if I could write, and, if I had a voice, as that publisher was
As the
saying.
publisher said, yeah, having a voice, yeah.
And felt that it was okay. I felt that I was connecting to people. The idea was to try and put them there on the studio and the factory floor. We were nicknamed the Hit Factory, and and just carried on really and finished it off, and didn't really seek a publisher as such because. As other people have said, there's so many choices out there of self-publishing. But I decided that, there'll be some sort of audience there, and I'll put it out a bit like we put out our own CDs these days.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
In the hope that a record company might pick it up eventually.
So they all sold. Was that the weapon that you needed for the national publication?
I think so. Plus, it's a very specialist music book publisher who is also a specialist in compiling CDs. So there's going to be a compilation CD of a lot of my 80s mixes to go with the book coming out in the new year. So luckily it was a fairly easy process, although along the way I did find an editor who in fact introduced me to the publisher. So I kind of, had a connection there. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes from here, actually.
All the very best of luck with it, Phil. Worked on the factory floor, as it was called back in those days, for PWL during the heyday of the Stock, Aitken and Waterman era. The book is called, Phil?
The book is called PWL From the Factory Floor, and there is a website that is thattitle.com where you can order it.
All right, good stuff. Now, it would be remiss of me not to rickroll the man who made the actual song. So there you go. Consider yourself rickrolled. You were the man who were the engineer on that song, right?
Yes.
There you go. Thank you very much, Phil. Good talking to you.
Thanks, James.
This is the thing you do on the internet these days, where you play a bit of Rick Astley to someone, and it's called rickrolling. I've just done it to the man who was the engineer of that song. So There you go. I claim a proper Rickroll this morning. My thanks to Phil Harding. It's a fascinating book, actually, if you were around. And, of course, we all were, weren't we, back in those heydays of Stock, Aitken and Waterman. It's a fascinating read as to hear how that all came together.